Fort Worden was designed to be impossible to burn. Sealed in concrete, buried in earth, its humid tunnels tried to snuff out even mold. Yet in the middle of a locked, powerless ruin, impossible fires erupted, melting concrete from the inside out. This abandoned fort blew itself up, but every expert failed to explain how. Are you ready to confront the one fire science still can't extinguish? Construction at Fort Worden began in 1897, driven by the need to guard Puget Sound from naval attack. Military engineers poured thousands of tons of concrete for the casemates, each wall measured between 2 and 4 feet thick, reinforced by a dense grid of steel rebar. These chambers were then buried beneath earth embankments, forming a defensive shell meant to resist direct artillery fire, shock waves, and even the heat of an explosion. Every detail aimed to eliminate risk. Ammunition magazines were sealed behind heavy steel doors and kept under climate control, with air so damp and cold that even the most stubborn mold found little to cling to. Underground, a network of tunnels ran through the hillside, their ceilings slick with condensation and their floors often flooded. The constant humidity and low temperatures were not a flaw, but a feature. By design, these conditions starved any stray spark of oxygen and cooled the air to suppress combustion. Electrical wiring was stripped out when the fort was decommissioned, and no fuel or power remained to feed a flame. The batteries and magazines sat dormant, locked tight against the elements and the outside world. Blueprints from the era show the precision of the design. Every vent, every drain, every slab calculated to contain pressure and prevent catastrophe. In theory, the fort was a fortress against fire as much as against enemy shells, a sealed environment where even nature's most destructive force was meant to have no purchase. White vapor drifted from a sealed vent high on the abandoned fort's western casemate, catching the attention of a Coast Guard patrol on a routine sweep in the mid-1950s. Radio calls brought in the county fire crew within the hour. Every hatch and door was still locked from the inside, untouched since the Army's last inspection. Yet, as the main team forced open the heavy steel doors, a wave of heat rolled out. No flames, only a suffocating metallic warmth. Inside, the concrete walls gave off a dull red glow, lighting the chamber with an unnatural haze. Water that had pooled on the floor from decades of seepage now bubbled and spat, sending jets of steam toward the ceiling. The sound echoed like pressure valves snapping open and shut. Firefighters trained for electrical blazes and fuel spills found themselves staring at a scene that made no sense. Concrete, not wood or oil, radiated heat. There was no smoke at first, only the hiss and crack of boiling water. Then, with no warning, shards of concrete shot from the wall, spalling under a force that seemed to come from within the structure itself. The crew's logbook, later archived at the county station, recorded temperature readings climbing off the scale and a hurried order to evacuate before the roof could fail. One firefighter decades later would recall, "It was like the concrete was burning from the inside." The fire left no charring on the floor, only blasted fragments and a lingering bitter smell as if something deep within the walls had tried to escape. In the 1970s, a new layer of monitoring arrived at Fort Worden's sealed ammunition galleries. Engineers installed thermal sensors, simple battery-powered units designed to catch any sign of chemical reactivity or hidden decay. For weeks, the sensors registered nothing out of the ordinary. Then, without warning, one gallery's printout recorded a sudden temperature spike. The room, which had sat at a steady 50 degrees Fahrenheit, climbed to over 90 in less than 10 minutes. The heat was not at floor level or near any wall, but hovered in a zone at the center of the ceiling, far from any vent, wiring, or known access point. Maintenance logs from the time note that when the inspection team finally opened the door, the air inside was thick and oppressive, but there was no visible fire. Oxygen readings came back too low to support open combustion, Still, the ceiling bore a wide, darkened patch, charred but not blistered, as if the heat had radiated outward from within the concrete itself. No accelerant was found, and the only chemical traces were those expected in old, damp concrete. The sensors, impartial by design, had captured a thermal event that left no ordinary clues. Technicians reset the monitors and sealed the gallery again, but the printout remained, a 10-minute pulse of heat rising from nowhere, leaving behind a mystery as stubborn as the fort's own walls. Certified fire investigators catalogued a set of patterns that defied every standard explanation. In several sealed chambers, scorch marks ran vertically up the concrete, stopping with razor precision halfway up the walls, no sign of a burn source above or below. In the tunnel network, incident logs describe pulses of red light flickering deep underground, visible for only a second at a time. Survey teams reported abrupt, clean edges to the scorch patterns, with no feathering or soot, evidence of radiant heat, not open flame. In some galleries, the heat front arrived before any smoke, reversing the usual order of combustion. Oxygen readings taken after these events consistently showed levels too low to support fire, yet the damage followed a selective path. Certain steel joints and drainage corners were scorched while adjacent concrete remained untouched. Firefighters and engineers noted that flames, when they appeared at all, vanished instantly, leaving behind only sharply defined burn prints and mid-wall streaks. The physical evidence forced a new question: how could fire behave with such precision in a place designed to smother it? Official records from the 1940s confirm that all munitions were removed from the fort's magazines before the site was sealed. Electrical surveys from the decommissioning period list 0 live circuits or power sources in the affected chambers. Steel doors and welded hatches kept every possible access point locked tight. Fire marshals and engineers reviewed the evidence: no fuel, no wiring, no open vents, and no chemical residues detected after each event. Laboratory tests tried to replicate the fort's conditions using saltwater-soaked concrete with embedded steel and copper. The results showed minor heating, never more than 20 degrees Celsius above ambient, and always limited to small patches. No experiment produced the simultaneous, wall-wide heat spikes or explosive spalling seen at Fort Worden. The galvanic battery hypothesis gained traction for a time, since hot zones often appeared where metal met salt water. But the numbers didn't add up. The energy output from corrosion cells fell far short of what would be needed to make concrete glow or water boil across an entire chamber. Engineers and materials scientists quietly settled on a label: thermodynamic anomaly. The cause, by every conventional measure, remains unsolved. Park rangers at Fort Worden keep careful notes on the oddities that surface year after year. Even on the coldest mornings, some visitors report stepping into pockets of warm air, sudden, invisible boundaries where the chill vanishes. These zones don't match any pattern of sunlight or airflow and tend to appear in sealed tunnels or empty magazines, sometimes shifting from one visit to the next. Rangers have logged dozens of these incidents, often pairing them with handheld infrared scans. The results show blotches of heat that move along the concrete walls, sometimes pausing, sometimes vanishing without a trace. After heavy rain, metal fixtures deep inside the fort's batteries have been heard humming or vibrating faintly, as if charged by something unseen. At night, vapor occasionally rises from the old gun pits, curling into the air and catching the light, an effect that's earned the site its nickname, the Breathing Fortress. No one has found a source for the warmth or the movement. The fort's own records simply add new sightings to the list, each entry another reminder that whatever the cause, the phenomenon is not finished with this place. Between 1897 and 1915, Fort Worden was engineered with 2 to 4 feet of reinforced concrete and sealed ammunition magazines, specifically to resist all known forms of fire and explosion. Yet, official Coast Guard logs and thermal sensor records from the 1950s and 1970s report unexplained heat surges, venting vapor, and scorch marks with no evidence of fuel, ignition, or outside access. Investigators have ruled out munitions residue, wiring faults, arson and chemical reactions. Laboratory attempts to replicate the phenomenon produced only minimal heat, far less than what was recorded inside the sealed fort. To this day, no primary source document explains how intense heat appeared in rooms designed to be fireproof. Infrared scans from recent years still show erratic hotspots, and the site's nickname, the Breathing Fortress, persists among visitors and staff. The case of Fort Worden stands as a documented thermodynamic anomaly, an enduring reminder that even the most secure places can defy explanation.